I'm Fatheree.
Hey, this is Dave.
And this is Tex Trek.
Welcome, y'all.
Engage.
Super redneck.
No, it's not gonna be super rednecky. We're modern Texans.
We have to say we're in Austin.
We are in Austin. We're the good Texans. So
yeah, I'm Dave. I manage a comic shop that where you shop at, and I'm also a lifelong Trekkie. You know, a Trekkie or Trekker?
I think they're interchangeable terms. Actually,
Me too.
I think like it's silly to prefer one or the other.
I agree. Although Trekkie is my default.
Well, you know, I always thought Trekkie was more common, but then I remember like being at a convention in '01. I was about 15, I guess, and that was like the first time I found out that a lot of people preferred to be called Trekkers.
Yeah,
and like it surprised me.
I mean, it sounds kind of cooler if I think about it. Like Trekkie sounds like preppy or something like that, but it is what I grew up with. I don't know.
But I think like the idea, this is kind of like a dated idea because there's not really like a stigma around fandom and nerdiness and stuff. But I think used
people
to
know the
like,
word cosplay now.
Yeah, the idea used to be was that if you call people Trekkie, like you're making fun of them,
right?
And like it's derogatory. But Trekker is the correct term. But
they had to take it back.
Yeah, but we're Texas Trekkers or Trekkies.
I don't know. It seems like the time is right now for a new Trek podcast. And especially with the new show coming.
Yeah, Star Trek Discovery coming out in January. So today, the day of recording is actually the 50th anniversary. It was 50 years ago today that the Mantrap aired on NBC. So it just felt like this is the right time to really take my Star Trek fandom and do something with it. To me, like, Star Trek has always been my favorite thing. And I say, like, thing in general, like, over, like, food and women and... It's just, I like Star Trek more than any other franchise or any other part of entertainment or art or whatever you want to call it.
You know, the interesting thing is, like, I feel like I'm comparatively to you, I'm a more casual Trek fan. I have not seen every season of every show. There's still some gaps in my knowledge. I went through a period of actually hating Next Generation, of rebelling against it because I grew up with the classic Star Trek and I was so devoted to it. But I love Trek. I've run Star Trek role-playing games before with a homebrew system, played video games, read novels. I feel like I've got my bona fides in there, and I love talking about it, so I was happy to be involved.
Well, I'm happy to have you on board, and so just to get started, let's talk about when you first got into Star Trek. What was it that attracted you to it, and how has your appreciation of Star Trek developed and changed over the years?
When I first got into it, it was this was in the like pre-cable days or pre-major cable days in the early '80s. I'm 42. How old are you, Steve?
I'm 30.
You punk. Anyway, and so there were reruns of it running in syndication. I'd come home from school and I watched Star Trek. My older brother very much got me into it. He watched Star Trek really, and so I watched Star Trek. And so I devotedly watched and rewatched all that original series stuff. Early on, I'm sure part of the attraction was just that usual attraction to sort of sci-fi that you got laser guns. I know they're phasers, but laser guns, cool ships, uniforms, monster aliens. On some sort of basic level like that, I was connecting. But I would also remember, like, they would have those serious episodes where I'd be like, why do I feel emotional about this? Kirk would make some inspiring speech, or Bones and Spock would get into it, and I would like, oh, this is stirring something in me, and so I was really caught up in the drama. The side of it that's the very Gene Roddenberry altruistic future, and that did not. I guess that probably was not the immediate grabber for me, and wouldn't become sort of part of what I liked about Trek probably until Next Generation. And there I had to fight with it a little bit, because like I say, I was used to the sort of more two-fisted style of Kirk's era. Mm-hmm. The dramatic close-ups on characters, the crazy mood lighting with purple, gel lights and stuff like that.
It definitely had a charm to it.
Yeah, and also more infighting. I know that like early on, Roddenberry kind of pushed for the crew members to really not fight amongst themselves, but only struggle with the moral dilemma of the week. And so that bugged me for a while. Actually that bugged me for a long time. I watched it because it was Trek, and I still loved it, or liked it. But it took like until like the late 90s almost before I kind of started falling back into it and really revisiting a lot of Star Trek. So yeah, my personal journey has had its ups and downs. I actually have come to like a lot of the stuff that I was kind of shaky on before. I don't hate anything but the Abrams movies.
There we go. Which I have very mixed feelings about the Abrams movies.
Yeah.
I don't dislike them as much as you do, but I'm sure we'll talk about that at some
we'll
point.
get around to it. And you know what? I'm gonna just. I know there are Trek fans out there that are sort of certainly more generous towards them, and a lot of them have liked the fact that it opened it up to a whole new generation of fans, which I absolutely won't deny. And I've seen all of them. I like parts of them, and I kind of notable. I thought the last one was a pretty good ride. But yeah, we'll no doubt have an Abrams episode in there.
Yes.
Sorry. So how about yourself? Where'd you come in on Trek?
Oh well, it started pretty early in life. So I was born in '86. So like you were already.
I was already like I was reading articles in like Starlog about this new Star Trek that's coming up.
Yeah.
That's probably while you were gestating or something.
So yeah, I was born a year before The Next Generation premiered, but I didn't really watch The Next Generation during its original run. When I really got into Star Trek was probably in the mid '90s. And for me, I really liked Star Wars from a very young age, and I don't know why, because like I grew up around people who didn't really care about movies, who didn't really care about science fiction, especially, and
you didn't have like friends who were like really into it.
Not yet. I mean, this is like when I was like 3, 4, 5, 6 years old.
Right.
Somehow, like somebody got me a copy of Star Wars on VHS, and my mom would often use the VCR as a babysitter, and I would just, from I guess when I was a toddler, I would operate the VCR myself, and I had like a few VHS tapes that I watched a lot. Ghostbusters, '89 Batman when that came out. Star Wars was like my favorite though, so I would watch. Like there was probably days where all I did was just like watch Star Wars, rewind it, and watch it again, and then. It was around the time when Star Trek Generations came out that I started like getting curious about Star Trek, and DS9 and Voyager were both on the air.
It's so interesting to me, by the way, when people come into it later than I did, I'm like, oh, I kind of feel like I'm on the purest level because even though I didn't grow up with the original series when it originally aired, I was watching reruns of it before at a time when there wasn't anything else coming out, before even like I guess the first movie hit, or maybe around that time.
Yeah,
and it's interesting to me it's a little bit like somebody coming in on Phantom Menace as their first Star Wars.
Oh yeah, that would drive me crazy to hear someone.
Although Generations is definitely a better movie than Phantom Menace.
It's not a good movie still, though.
What? I like Generations.
I don't.
We're gonna have a movie podcast.
We will. Yeah, we're gonna cover all the movies, all the shows. But what I did really like was Deep Space Nine, and I probably got into it around like season 3 when the show like actually started getting good. So I was watching that and Voyager. Also at the same time, I was there were reruns of the Next Generation airing, and I was just trying to consume as much Star Trek as possible.
Yeah.
Because it was all new to me. So
Did you catch that? That was like Next Generation at least sort of preceded DS9.
Yeah, and I was also watching the original series because I had access to all the movies. They were all like on VHS. I could go rent those and watch them. Surprisingly, I didn't get to see the motion picture until later because where I grew up in Rockdale, Texas, there are 2 stores there where you can rent movies from. It's a small town. Neither one of them had the motion picture on VHS, so I started with The Wrath of Khan. And
That's
then
the best place to start.
Yeah, which is when I introduce those movies, the original series movie era movies to people now. Like I always start them on The Wrath of Khan.
Right.
But I did get to see all the original series on VHS. I own the 30th anniversary set they released of the original series on VHS. It's like 40 VHS tapes, 2 episodes on a tape that came out in '96 for the 30th anniversary.
Wait, you have all the VHS?
Yes.
Ones?
They're actually, y'all can't see this, but I'm pointing to a bunch of boxes, and there's a box over there that contains all the original series on VHS. These prestigious cases. It was like the Disney cases, or like they open like a book and like you pull the tape out.
Oh, wow.
They're like that.
Anybody like over 30 might know this. Anybody under might not. But in those days, there were no like box sets were just starting to become a concept, and there was like installment plans, and you would like pay over time and get like 2 episodes at a time, very slowly, and over the course of a year or 2, you might get a series. I mean, it was...
And that's how I got these, was I actually...
That's wild.
I had an aunt who was really, really sweet and really good to me and my sister growing up. And somehow I talked her into for... I think it was for my birthday or something. My birthday or Christmas, but she like subscribed to this thing where like she would pay $10 a month and they would send in the VHS tape.
Yeah.
And so that's because I really, really wanted to watch the original series. And this was in the mid '90s. It was before Netflix. There was no like streaming service. There was no like online torrent site that I could pirate it.
Even DVDs had not come about yet too, which
and
was just holding more information.
The thing was that I really wanted to see the original series. I'd seen the movies, I was familiar with the characters, and I just wanted to see like that side of the Star Trek universe. So getting those on
I need
VHS
to see these guys before they got fat.
yeah. I need to see William Shatner when he still had hair, not a toupee.
Now, out of curiosity, did your aunt watch them?
She would sometimes watch Voyager or DS9 with me, but she wasn't like as into Star Trek as I was. Yeah. She did take me to go see Star Trek First Contact, which was the first Star Trek film I saw in the theaters. And that was the cool thing about 1996 was it was the 30th anniversary of Star Trek. I had 2 Star Trek shows on TV that I could watch, and then the movie Star Trek First Contact came out.
Yeah.
And it seemed just like a really cool thing. It's like a really big deal for like the 30th anniversary.
Yeah.
So me wanting to do this podcast, it kind of came out of, I felt like there wasn't much going on for the 50th anniversary, because back then when I was 10 years old in 96, I would always dream about like, what's the 50th anniversary of Star Trek going to be like? And I was saying, like, there will probably be like 4 shows on the air by then, and they're gonna have like a badass movie come out, and it never dawned on me.
We'll all go into our personal holodecks, because it's the future.
Sure, why not? It never dawned on me that Star Trek was going to go off the air and not be on TV, like what happened in 2005 when Enterprise was canceled. And I really wanted to do something personally for like the 50th anniversary of Star Trek. I was looking around online, and there are some Star Trek podcasts and some Star Trek YouTube channels, but I noticed there is a lot more stuff for other fandoms like Star Wars or Game of Thrones. And
There's something I noticed at the comic shop I manage is Doctor Who kind of took over in the 2000s.
it did.
And you know, I love Doctor Who, so I was happy to see that. Not happy to see that happen, but I was happy that there was a kind of optimistic sci-fi show out there, even if it had people talking in strange accents. But it very much, there was even like a lot of product and stuff for it. They started putting out a lot of books. They've always been supported like audio tapes and stuff, and it kind of took over. It had the fandom that Trek once commanded.
Yeah.
So it was weird.
And if you look at like how it times out, Star Trek was on the air continuously from 1987 until 2005.
Mm-hmm.
You had 7 years of Next Generation, that ended, and you have 7 years of Voyager, that ended, then you had 4 years of Enterprise, and DS9 overlapped with Next Generation and Voyager.
Right.
But in 2005, when Enterprise was canceled, that was the year that Russell T Davies and BBC brought Doctor Who back.
Oh, I didn't realize it coincided so precisely.
And so I think a lot of that desire to see that kind of science fiction show that does have like that optimistic philosophy, and
right.
you know that does show audiences like other worlds, and it's all about going, exploring, that type of stuff. Like I think the big audience is transferred from Star Trek to Doctor Who in 2005.
We might actually get a horse race now that we've got Discovery coming. That's the new show, right?
Right.
And audiences are at least, I think, a little primed for it because of the Abrams movies. Trek has re-entered the mindset of people, and probably in a somewhat less nerdy way than it was generally considered.
Well, yeah, and that's just pop culture in general. It's a lot cooler to talk about Star Trek or comics or
something like Game of
Thrones.
As well made as it is, would have still been kind of relegated to kind of Nerdville back in the day, and
right.
now it's completely mainstream.
Yeah, it's like the most popular show on the air.
If the new Trek, which I know will have some ratings options in it, be able to push the edge a little bit, if they can just throw in some Game of Thrones nudity, it will be the most popular Trek.
You know
of them
what?
all.
Gene Roddenberry would have loved that.
He was kind of sexually progressive, right?
Yes, but he also loved putting women in the most revealing costumes possible.
Yeah, that sounds about right. There's still the old I guess that kind of dates back almost to the old sci-fi pulp tradition, of the lurid covers, Flash Gordon saving a scantily clad lady.
Well, he was very progressive where gender is concerned. He did in the first attempt of a pilot in The Cage with Jeffrey Hunter's Christopher Pike. He had Majel Barrett
right.
as
female first officer,
yeah. number one, and that was the thing that really bothered a lot of people at the network.
Right,
when
they
he was
freaked their
shocking
shit.
it to
They're
NBC.
like, what?
Yeah, they're like, you can't have a woman be in charge, or a woman be second in command. But he also, at the same time, he look at the short skirts on the original series.
Yep.
If you read the notes that he would give writers and stuff, the episode Mudd's Women.
Yeah.
Where the intergalactic con man Harry Mudd is smuggling I guess he's trafficking women.
Yeah.
And if you read
he's kind of presented, by the way, as an impish kind of delightful scoundrel, and you're like, he's a human trafficker.
But he's a pretty creepy guy if you look at it from a modern context.
And yet I still I like the guy. I wanna.
Yeah, he's kind of funny, but if you read Gene Roddenberry's notes, he's like, it's really cool. This will be an episode about space hookers, and there's a pimp trying to get these guys to buy these women. He always talks about.
He did not use the word pimp.
He did. He used the word pimp.
I mean, I know it was around. That's crazy. I've not seen these show notes.
But he also used the word hookers.
Yeah. Well, he had
been screwing a lot.
That's funny. He had been a cop, right? At some point.
Yes. So another exciting thing about this podcast that a lot of people don't talk about is that the man who gave life to Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry, was actually born in El Paso, Texas. So,
I did not know that.
Yeah. So
Trek has its southern roots.
Right. Yeah. The man who gave birth to Star Trek was a man who Texas gave birth to. So Texas is like the grandparent of Star Trek.
That's super cool. I actually did not know that.
Yeah.
I am learning things on the very podcast I'm on.
There we go. And Gene Roddenberry, he did spend time as a cop, and he I think he was in the Air Force in World War II. Mm-hmm. He lived in California most of his life, but yeah, he definitely had a really brilliant concept with Star Trek, but I think Star Trek did benefit from, after its initial creation, you had a bunch of other creative influences come in, and it always gets to like the Star Wars problem where like George Lucas having total control, it really diminishes the quality of the show.
Right, you kind of crawl up your own butt, you get tunnel vision.
Yeah.
If it's just all one guy. I mean, at the same time, it's great for getting something off the ground because you have that drive to really push your vision through, but it can go wrong.
If you look at the Star Trek movies, the only movie that he had like total creative control over was the motion picture. Which a lot of people consider that the worst or one of the worst Star Trek movies. The first 2 seasons of The Next Generation, he was very heavily involved.
And that's rough going.
And there were writers being fired left and right. People didn't want to work on the show. It was too hard to deal with Gene. Like you were talking about, like he didn't want to have any conflict. And, without conflict, you can't really write drama.
You know what's funny is that, like, early on, Picard was supposed to, like, hate kids and stuff like that. And that was actually some internal conflict, but they kind of dropped that stuff. And I think, like, Riker was like, I hate androids, and they dropped that too.
Well, I don't know if he was ever like, I hate androids.
He was, no, there was something, I think they were all supposed to be a little bit skeptical.
When he first meets Data on the holodeck.
Yeah.
And Data says something about his ability to do something, and Riker says, do you consider yourself superior to us? Very like concerned and offended. And then Data, just, in straight stoic Data style, is like, I am superior in many ways.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I remember this scene. It's I'm not a huge fan of that episode, but it's a good moment, and that's also when he says he would trade it to be human, right?
Yeah.
That's
but I would give it all up to be human. Yeah. You don't like encounter at Farpoint.
Nah.
Okay, well, we'll get into that. But,
there's going to be a fight in this episode. We're going to take it real Texas.
No, it's infinite diversity and infinite combinations.
Yeah. Well, if you're talking about Trek philosophy, that is like has to be like the deepest, most underlying concept of it.
For sure, and that's such a great just a way to view the world and try to experience the world. And
I think the first time my brother told me about that, which I'm guessing most people listening to this kind of know it, but it's the Vulcan sort of eidetic is the short version of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of the like a philosophical underpinning to everything that's in Vulcan philosophy, infinite diversity and infinite combinations. I first probably heard that sometime in the mid '80s, maybe even kind of from one of the books. Does it come out in the original series? It does, doesn't
yes.
it? Yeah. And it was kind of, it had to have been the first time I think I thought of the word diversity as having a quality to it, that I'm like, I had never even considered that notion that, of strength in diversity, really as like in any sort of deep way as a kid. And even then, I'm sure at like 9 or 10 or whatever I was watching the early episodes, I wasn't like absorbing it in depth. But the thoughts come through in the episodes, and if only like right there in the membership of the bridge crew, it's a little heavy-handed that one of everyone kind of, one Russian, one black chick, one Asian guy, and an alien, and yet it was an amazing crew. The diversity, the somewhat forced diversity, is now taken for granted. They're beloved, as much as any characters. I don't know where I was going with that.
Well,
I'm just saying that the philosophy did get through to me, even though I don't think I ever thought of myself as like being into Trek's philosophy. As a kid, I don't know. Did you have a cognizance that you were like, I like the ethos of this show a lot?
I think I did.
Really,
actually. But I
feel like that was burning on a subconscious level for me.
Yeah, like when I even now, like I carry it on like as an adult. Like when I think about things like politics or social issues. I always think, well, that's like my moral compass is like the Star Trek
What would
philosophy.
Picard do, or
what can we do like to be closer to like the Federation, this utopia society, and
yet what's interesting, by the way, is your favorite Trek is DS9, which I know had a lot of moral compromises in it, and that's the one, by the way, I know least. So as we're going through this, I'm planning to catch up on a lot of DS9.
Yeah, and that's going to be a lot of fun to talk about. And I think that when you put the Star Trek philosophy to the test,
and that's the one that I feel probably really did it the most.
And that's it's a quote from the episode. Ben Sisko is referencing something that's happening on these colonies that have been controlled. The colonies that has fallen back to the Cardassians, and the terrorist group, the Maquis, show up, and that leads into Voyager later, and people are like up in arms. Why would Federation citizens resort to this? And Sisko says, well, it's easy to be a saint in paradise.
Right.
And so when you're faced with the kinds of obstacles that Ben Sisko faces, that really puts that philosophy to the test. And
what you're saying is that, there's some truth to this, that the Federation is kind of the privileged. They're the privileged
for
ones.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're the most privileged. There's resources just abound all over the Federation, or the humans in particular. Earth is shown to be a utopia society. Humans don't have money. They just have everything's just basically given to them.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like if there's any weakness to Trek, it's that it's in having done in one episodes as such a big part of its early decades, is that it did make it feel like sort of any problem could be resolved with a little bit of intuition and luck and a little elbow grease and some know-how, and maybe occasionally a thrown punch or two or some phasers, good bluff. But I don't feel that they always put to the test the ideas. That said, they had some darker episodes. They had some ones where people had to make some rough choices, and that I kind of would later come to appreciate that Next Generation was more nuanced than the original on that kind of stuff. What else are we going to talk about in the show?
Well, just to describe the show in general, we're going to be covering all the various Star Trek shows and movies. We're also going to talk about Star Trek.
But not on an episode by episode basis. We're not going to say we're going to start with episode 1 of
right.
Voyager.
No, we're going to jump around. We'll have some episodes focus on particular episodes. We'll have some episodes that focus on
or a theme. It might be some comedic episodes compared between the different ones.
For sure, we're going to take a close look at the pilots of every episode. And just because those are the obvious starting points for someone who's getting into Star Trek for the first time, or watching one of the shows that they haven't seen its entire run before. We're also going to talk about Star Trek in video games. There's the Star Trek Online is coming to PlayStation 4 and Xbox One soon.
As of this recording, it's out. I downloaded it the other night, or it was
already
left.
out.
It's out. It was left to download. I have not played it yet,
okay.
But neither of us have played it on the PC, where it's been out for 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, so it's gonna be new to us. We're gonna talk about that.
Also, on the tabletop game side of things, there's been a lot of board games that might have gone under people's radar in the last 10, 15 years, and I've played a decent number of them. Surprised at how good some of them are. Because licensed games don't tend to be great.
Sure. And I haven't played any of them, so
we'll be playing those, not necessarily in front of the camera, but we'll be breaking them down and telling you which ones are awesome in case you should want to go also try them out. I think we should get into some of the thorny moral issues and stuff at times. That's going to come up in the episodes naturally as we talk about
that'll
it.
for sure come up.
And also, I don't know, some goofy shit too.
Yeah, there's plenty of
we're going to get to
episodes. There's from that goes back to the original series, from the Trouble with Tribbles and.
Right.
And
I feel like the original series is untouchable as far as its comedic timing.
Yeah, there are some very major failures in later shows trying to do comedy. Enterprise comes to mind.
Yeah. Well, Peter David, who's a novelist, he's a comic writer. He's done a ton of Trek books. And I remember reading an interview with him one time where he said his biggest problem with Next Generation was its lack of humor, or lack of bad sense of humor, sort of. So he brought a little bit to more of that in his writing, and he made an interesting justification for it, where I think he said that essentially the Vietnam War like robbed our country of its sort of underlying sense of humor, so that like when we thought about some of the deeper social issues and things like that, it was kind of a little bit grim. And just it was a little tougher to joke, which I think there's something to that.
Speaking of Peter David, we're also going to be talking about the various Star Trek comics, particularly some of the upcoming stuff coming from IDW.
Right, they've been doing ones based on the Abrams verse.
There's an ongoing series set in the. It's not the Abrams verse. It's called the Kelvin timeline.
Okay, yeah, sorry, as
that's the official Paramount and CBS name.
Right.
Is the Kelvin timeline. We have the Kelvin timeline and the Prime timeline.
Timeline with the good one.
The good one.
And right, but the new thing coming up from IDW in the next few months is going to be like an anthology comic where
it's going to be Prime.
It's set in the Prime universe and will bounce around between the different eras. I think they're doing like 2 or 3 stories per issue. So you could get a classic Trek, a Voyager, and a DS9. All back to back.
Right. Yeah. No. There's going to be at least one TOS story. They're doing something that is kind of in the future with Captain Geordi LaForge.
Yeah.
And there's going to be several different creators involved. I think, isn't it? It's different writers.
Yes, different. Each story will be a different writer and artist. So I imagine that in a given issue you're going to have, I think, at least 2 stories. Maybe that's the set thing. It's 2 stories. So you're going to have like at least probably 2 writers per issue. I remember reading one of the writers saying that they definitely wanted to do a bit of a buddy story with Data and Geordi, which sounds awesome. I want that to come off. There's not a lot of great Star Trek comics out there, but I've hit some good ones over the years, so we can talk about that and the books and stuff as well.
Just to close on talking about the Mantrap, since this is the 50th anniversary of when the Mantrap aired. That is an episode of Star Trek, the original series, that I think does a pretty good job of showing what to expect in the show.
Mm-hmm.
But it probably isn't the best episode. I've talked to people before who, they see that episode.
You mean the best
first.
episode to start with? Like, do you think to get to?
I mean, just in terms of quality.
Right.
It is kind of dated in a lot of ways, primarily because if you watch just the segment before the opening credits,
mm-hmm.
you know everything that's going to happen in that episode. Like you're given enough information there. You're like, okay, there's something weird about that lady. She appears differently to different people, and she's probably the thing that's killing people.
Right.
and it never tries to like really hide that or trick you or I think about like, well, if Joss Whedon wrote that, it would be in like this double twist, and then it's like, oh, it's actually like Dr. McCoy was the salt vampire or
right.
But it never does that. Like
I think the pleasure, it's been a little while since I've seen that one, but the pleasure I remember getting from it is in finding out specifically how it is she operates, which that weird mystery of like her, kind of is a detective story in the sense like you may know who the killer is, but you got to find a motive and method and all that stuff. And having the salt absorbed through your skin is a pretty horrific and apparently agonizing way to die. And so that was interesting. And then also watching just McCoy put through an emotional ringer. So you get to see him sort of rediscover this old flame of his, right?
Yeah.
So you're also just seeing the characters revealed through the story. But I could agree. It is not like it's a pretty solid kind of like. I mean, it also probably had to be. It's like it gave people a space monster in the '60s. It might have been a good story for them to begin with. They got the space monster. They got a little love story. They got some action scenes. They got a mystery. It is kind of a little dated in its contrivances, but and that ending scene is so cool. Spock starts wailing on this chick, with the classic double fist punch which in the original series is the single most powerful attack you can do.
Knocks people out.
If it were like a Street Fighter type game, that'd be like an attack you have to charge up for.
Yeah, that'd be one of the combos or something.
Yeah.
But that one thing I do like about that episode is it does pretty clearly showcase the dynamics between the Trinity with
Right.
Bones, Spock, and Kirk.
Yep.
That's set up very well, and
that is a lot of the heart of the show there too. And in some ways, I feel like sometimes the ideas in Star Trek: The Next Generation took precedence over the characters that were exploring them. The bridge crew. But a lot of times the characters took precedence. Were more enthralling than sometimes the ideas in the original series. Does that make sense?
Next Generation did a better job of focusing on each character, though.
You think?
How many good Chekhov episodes were there?
Yeah, I mean, they had a broader cast, but I would also say that I feel like they never hit these sparks that Kirk, Spock, McCoy did. And I'd say Scotty was a damn good character.
Yeah, but okay, besides Scotty, McCoy...
Sulu got an episode. Uhura would occasionally get moments. Yeah, no, they explored it. I think what I felt like some of their character direction for like Geordi and early on, especially Worf, before they kind of knew what to do with him, was like really particularly weak. I felt like the drama of it wasn't well handled. But they did. I mean, they also had over twice as much running time season wise to explore the characters. I would say the '60s show was kind of more plot motivated, and sometimes the Next Generation was more character driven. I think I didn't like it, at least I didn't immediately like those characters as much. I later warmed to them.
Cool. Well, I think that about wraps it up for our Maiden Voyage episode.
Yeah.
But we will sign off for now. Be sure to check out our next installment where we will discuss Star Trek Discovery, the upcoming TV show.
And until next time, live
long and prosper, y'all. Thank all of you so much for checking out this installment of Tex Trek. I hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to like our YouTube videos and subscribe to our channel. Audio-only version of episodes are available at our website, www.tex-trek.com. Please check out our site, especially if you just want an audio-only podcast. We have that available for you. Y'all can also keep up with us online. You can follow us on Twitter at Tex Trek, or you can check us out on Facebook at www.facebook.com/tex-trek. Please, by all means, let us know what you think by dropping a comment anywhere you see fit. We definitely want to hear your feedback. Let us know what you liked and what you would like to see more of, what you would like to see differently going forward. If you want to email me directly, go ahead. I can be reached at fathereeactual@tex-trek.com. Thank all y'all again. Take care.